This is Lisa from Mobile Tech Review, and boy, there's all kinds of phones out there these days, aren't there? Just went from reviewing the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 to this, much more affordable and much smaller phone. This is the Honor 8 by Huawei. Honor is their affordable line, and it's the one they're going after supposedly the millennial generation with. Personally, I don't think phones have generations, or generational appeal. I think it's a pretty nice phone. I'm not a millennial. There it is. For $399, you get a very, very attractive looking phone. Available in your choice of this blue, which is really stunning. We'll take a look at it a little bit more closely in a bit. And it's available in white. It's available in black too. And the white one and the black one look an awful lot like iPhone 6s with a little bit of a Samsung flair. So hey, there you go. It's Romeo and Juliet style. If the iPhone and the Samsung Galaxy S7 ran off and had an affordable kid, this would be it, because you get the nice glass front and back with the metal over here, design quality. You get a very bright, high color gamut display. A pretty decent processor inside, a dual camera on the back, a lot like the Huawei P9, and not surprisingly, it probably is the exact same setup as that. 4 gigs of RAM, 32 gigs of storage, Android 6. $399, 32 gigs of storage. If you want 64, it's $50 more, so it's $449. There's competition in this price range, obviously, from the Alcatel Idol 4S that we recently reviewed that certainly isn't as pretty as this, but it's pretty nice looking. And then there's the OnePlus 3, which is the big competitor for the enthusiasts out there because it has the fancy pants Snapdragon 820 CPU, but it's also a bigger phone, and it's not available at as many retailers as this. This you can go and pick it up soon at Amazon, at B&H Photo Video, at Newegg, even at Best Buy. So you got the return policy, that kind of thing there. OnePlus is a little bit on their customer support and trying to return things and all that sort of thing. So this actually might be a little bit more mainstream. It's an unlocked GSM phone. It works with T-Mobile and AT&T and their offshoot carriers in the US. So that makes it pretty versatile. No carrier commitment, no nothing like that. We're going to look at it now. The display on this really is nice. This photo that I took of a leaf, it looks as vibrant as it would on my monitor. That's pretty impressive stuff. It's 1920 by 1080 display. That's 423 ppi, so that's pretty respectable. It's a 5.2-inch display. You really don't need QHD resolution there. And at 96% of NTSC, you've got better than sRGB coverage. Not bad for the price there. The back and the front are covered with 2D glass. That means curved glass. And certainly this is a gorgeous looking phone. I really like the blue. And it's got a 15-layer back construction to give it that kind of shimmery, complex look. It's actually more interesting to look at than the blue Samsung Galaxy Note 7. That's the Fingerprint Scanner, that big circle there in, almost dead center. And it works really quickly. It's one of the fastest fingerprint scanners that's on the market right now. You touch it and boom. You don't have to do anything else. You just lay your finger on it, unlocks, and it works. The dual camera eyes there, I have a feeling that's going to be a thing for 2017 and late 2016. We'll talk a little bit more about the camera later. The bottom has the usual speaker. There's a USB-C port. Yay, we like to see USB-C these days. It supports fast charging too. And of course, there's a headphone jack. Long live the headphone jack. Otherwise, the design is pretty normal. You got your volume rocker, you got your power button. Nothing much to say there. It just happens to be keenly pretty looking. Performance is on the upper end of mid-range, which fits the $400 price tag pretty well, unless you look at that OnePlus 3, again in the same price range. It's the fastest performer, certainly. This performs about as well as the Alcatel Idol 4S, though, and we'll talk about the CPU inside, which is Huawei's own. So it's interesting to see yet another player, somebody making a CPU, and it's a pretty decent CPU. Got 3,000 milliamp battery in here, dual band Wi-Fi, 802.11 AC, NFC, GPS, Bluetooth. So no being stuck with single band Wi-Fi, which used to be a problem with mid-rangey kind of price phones. So what we have here is Android 6 Marshmallow, and Huawei spokesperson has said that this can get OS updates for up to 2 years. He didn't explicitly say that definitely will get it for 2 years, but that's a good commitment to see, because usually phones in the $400 and under price range, there's not always much of a commitment to give OS updates. This is running Huawei's EMUI, as they call it, otherwise abbreviated with capital EMUI, version 4.1. It's gotten better, folks. I really never used to like it at all. You still have your app launcher as being the rightmost screen here, so everything you have installed shows up there. But, it's a pretty simple concept there to do that sort of thing. The rest of it's fairly stock and standard, and no cartoony icons or anything like that. It's okay. It's certainly not a heavy overlay that's going to be a problem. And the notifications are a little bit interesting. Here we have the timeline view, and you can actually have something multimedia. Now, this is not a carrier phone, so you could say there's no bloatware, but they do preload a couple of apps. Not a whole lot, but News Republic is one, and boy, does it like to give you notifications, which you can, of course, turn off or uninstall if News Republic is not your thing. This is what the settings shortcuts look like. It's fairly self-explanatory there. And let's take a look at the settings. This looks pretty much like Google Material Design and Presentation, and that's fine. And they have a lot of nice little customizations here that you can use. And let's take a look. For one, there's a fingerprint ID for enrolling your fingerprint. That's pretty self-explanatory. Under Smart Assistants here, well, what could that possibly be? We have the Smart Key. What that means is you can have the Fingerprint Scanner also become your application launcher. A couple of different applications you can launch or functions that you can do. We've got motion control, pretty popular in phones. You can put it face down to mute it and stop the ringing from happening. You can use your knuckle to take a screenshot. I don't personally understand the idea of that. I mean, there are phones that have the draw C to launch the camera, and that's fine. Why we need knuckles, I don't know. The only time I want to do that is when I'm cooking and I need to actually flip the page to look at the recipe, and I don't want to put my dirty fingers on the screen. And you can also use voice wake up to wake up the phone, broadcast incoming calls. That's a sure way to terrify yourself in the night. But don't worry, it has do not disturb and all those kind of nice things too. So a decent set of software features there, none of them terribly intrusive, none of them terribly heavyweight, so it's not going to bog the phone down any. So how about performance in gaming? Well, we've got the latest Need for Speed game running here. That's a pretty demanding game, and it's playing really nicely. So it's got the horsepower to do that. This is the hisilicon Kirin 950. This is Huawei's own CPU, and I think it's cool that they're doing their own CPUs. Look, if Samsung hadn't started Exynos, then Qualcomm Snapdragon would own the absolute entire market, right? It's a pretty competent upper mid-range CPU. That's pretty equivalent to the Qualcomm Snapdragon 652, give or take on some benchmarks that we saw in the Alcatel Idol 4S. This has Mali T880 graphics inside, and it's got 8 cores, 4 high power, 4 low power. The high power cores are running at 2.3 gigahertz. The low power cores are running at 1.8 gigahertz. Again, 4 gigs of RAM is standard on this. So experientially, the phone usually feels fast. Once in a while, I notice a little micro lag. That's not an unusual thing with Android phones, and I say that as an Android user. It's pretty good. It's pretty fast. Again, it's upper mid-range, and that's enough for most people. And you can see on a benchmark comparison where it sits. It's going to be below, obviously, something like a top dog like the Moto Z Force or the Samsung Galaxy S7, but it's neck and neck with the Idol 4 and way faster than the Moto G4. For cameras, we have an 8 megapixel front camera with a 1.4 mu pixel. It's oversized pixel, so you're going to get brighter images. It actually does a pretty good job, certainly for selfies and for video chat too. And we have the 12 megapixel camera with the dual rear cameras. One is color, one is grayscale. The idea there is it can use that for depth sensing to create depth of field effects. And also the grayscale camera can aid in just picking out detail that the color camera, it also has to pick up color data. Supposed to help. It's a good camera. It's not the best camera on the market, which is fair for a phone in this price range, but I know that Huawei has been doing a lot of bragging about the P9, which also has the same camera arrangement. Given the price range, you're not going to get 4K video recording, no optical image stabilization, which means if you have a bouncy hand, you're going to have bouncy footage. If you have a bouncy hand, you're going to have a blurry photo. So keep your hand still. The UI is pretty simple here. And I guess to some of your advanced settings, you see the dots here. It's kind of odd. The UI is a little bit designed for using it in portrait mode. Most of us usually do landscape mode. So what it really means is do that. So here you've got Pro Photo, you got Beauty. There's a depth of field or wide aperture mode, and that one can go down to what I believe is a virtual f0.95 through f16 if you want. Huawei does list the rear lenses being f2.2 for the actual hardware. We have good food. We have night shot. Light painting. Light painting means, if you're taking a picture and you have the trails of headlights and taillights creating light lines on your screen, that's what it is. Really what it's using is a very slow shutter speed. So again, hold your hand still. And you got HDR and all that sort of thing too. Swipe down there. And then you have basic settings here, obviously meant to be used in portrait mode. So it's pretty easy to use. It's fairly quick to focus. You can do a tap to focus if you want. You can control your flash. You can go in full auto mode and even control the shutter speed, which is pretty neat. So we're going to take a look at the sample photos now. So here's a sample of a photo taken outdoors, and obviously pretty good lighting here, and the detail is very nice. There's plenty of sharpening going on in camera, but it's nothing egregious. It doesn't look nasty, over sharpened. There's no halo effects or anything like that. It's actually a pretty nice photo, and I think a lot of people would be happy with this camera. And here's a low light photo sample. Pretty dark room, pretty cute cat, but he's contrasty, isn't he? So the whites blow out a little bit, but it's actually very well controlled. Again, I think folks would be happy with this. But let's take a look at the more expensive competition if you're wondering what you get for your money. The next picture is taken with the same cat, obviously, same position. Samsung Galaxy Note 7 was used. And you can see that it pops more and there's a bit more detail. Let's take a look at that. There's a level of detail, sharpness, and clarity here that's a lot more like a point and shoot, but the Samsung Galaxy Note 7 is more than twice as expensive, isn't it? And next, let's see, because you see one picture, you see another, your mind's already getting a little fuzzy here. So we're going to show 100% crops of the cat's ear. Granted, not the most attractive part of his anatomy, but I think you'll see the difference in smudginess of parts of the ear on the Honor 8 versus a lot of actual real detail and a bit better contrast on the Galaxy Note 7. So there you have it. Here, this is obviously when you're looking at 100% crop where the differences are. Now, if you're going to be using this for small blog post pictures, for your Instagram, for your Facebook, nobody's going to be able to tell the difference because you're not going to be zooming in this much on the image. But obviously, there's just more detail available if you do spend more, but that's fair, right? I mean, otherwise, why would anybody spend more than X amount of dollars on a phone? Call quality on the phone is quite good, and it supports CAT6 LTE and quite a few LTE 4G bands compatible with GSM carriers. And in the description for this video, right down below, you'll see a list of the bands supported. And that does include, once again, T-Mobile's band 12, because that's one that often goes missing for unlocked phones. And here you can see even the dialer has their timeline approach to things, which they like to do. Pretty standard dialer here. Data speeds likewise are quite good. We tested this with AT&T and T-Mobile, and just as good as a carrier-branded phone, honestly. Other little sweet add-ons they have is everybody's into the blue light mode now, to cut down on blue light at night before you go to bed, because that's supposed to potentially keep you up at night. So we've got that. There are even display color adjustments. If you want to go into the display and you decide that you want it particularly warmer or cooler, you can go to color temperature right here and go to town and make it gee golly fuzzy warm or really obnoxiously blue-white bright. It's up to you, and anywhere in between, obviously. And then there's little presets here for people who don't know how to use the color wheel, which is probably most people. The default actually is pretty nice. It's neither hideously bluish nor is it too warm. So this little 5.2-inch phone has a pretty large battery, 3,000 milliamps. That's more the capacity we would see in a phablet. Sealed inside, obviously, pretty phones like this that are also skinny are those with sealed batteries. So battery life should be pretty good, right? And Huawei's Kirin have been improving when it comes to battery life and efficiency. We only have a 1080p display here. It does get pretty bright, so that's a factor. And battery life is okay. It's not wildly good. I think it really did need all 3,000 milliamps to help you make it through a full day. With moderate use, this should go from 8 a.m. to 11 p.m., and you'll probably be at about 10% at that point. It is not super frugal with battery life. It's not terrible either. It doesn't get too hot, though, I'll tell you. Even when playing Need for Speed and demanding games like that, yeah, it gets a little warm, and that's about it, which is pretty impressive for a phone this thin. It does show fingerprints like mad. Look at that, just from me touching it now. Ugh, right? The white probably is the best choice if that bothers you. The black would be the worst, and this is somewhere in between. The only thing worse for showing fingerprints is Huawei's little plastic cover here that you can get and put on the phone. Nice. It's blue ones available for the blue. This really shows fingerprints like nothing else, but it does obviously protect the phone and keeps it pretty thin. Doesn't protect the sides over here, but they are aluminum. They're reasonably durable. So that's the Honor 8 by Huawei. One damn fine looking phone. It is very pretty. It punches above its weight when it comes to build quality materials. The software customizations are pretty nice. Emotion UI used to not be on my I love it list, but they've really toned it down and put in some thoughtful improvements. There's a lot of software features in here too, that I think most people are going to enjoy. Call quality is good on this. Data speed's fine. You get CAT6 LTE. The cameras on the back may not beat the top in the class, but this phone is not priced like that, is it? And it's pretty decent camera. And the front 8 megapixel camera is certainly good enough for selfies and video chats. So if you're looking for a phone that's not going to break the bank and you want something that looks pretty high quality, you know, this does it. And gosh, with the fastest fingerprint scanner around, and just like the iPhone 6S. I'm Lisa from Mobile Tech Review. Be sure to visit our website for the full written review and subscribe to our YouTube channel for more cool tech videos.